Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me today. I do truly appreciate it. Today, I'm going to be talking about some of my favorite books that I read in the year 2023. So, this is going to be the top 5 books that I read in 2023, and the rules are fuzzy because I make them and I change them when I want to. But anyway, this is going to be books that I read, not necessarily books that came out. In fact, maybe only one kind of came out in 2023. But these are the books that I read. I read very old books. I've read some new books, all sorts of things. And these will be the ones that when I look back at the list of things I read that I like the most. And I'm going to put them in an order from fifth to first. First being the one that I think I like the best, or maybe that I think was the best. But I tend to stick with what I like because it's my deal. So anyway, there are some that are going to be painful where I think, how could this not be higher on the list? But anyway, it's the top 5. They're all good. They're all great. They're all my favorite books that I read. All right, so here we are. Same day, different time. And I just realized I did not mention all of the rules for this list. One of the rules that I've implemented for this list is that I'm not going to be covering sequels in series. For example, the Repairman Jack series is a series that I love. Had I read Bloodlines from that series this year, which I read it years ago, but had I read that book, it wouldn't qualify because it's in the middle of a series. However, had I read The Tomb, which was the first book that became a series, I think it would have qualified. So there is a rule for this list. Additionally, I'm not going to put in multiple books from the same author. We're going to pick the best book from that author. Those are just the rules that I've implemented for this list. Anyway, back to the regularly scheduled programming. I'm at a hotel, by the way. Traveled down to Miami at the Homewood Suites. So to start with, I read some books that were big timers, iconic, and they didn't make the list, like It by Stephen King. And I don't know if I want to get into It or why it's not top 5 or best book I ever read, but I think I will. At times, It was the best book I ever read. And at times I thought, come on, get on with it. I felt like I was reading stuff that didn't matter in any way to the story. In fact, my absolute favorite character didn't matter in any way to the story. Mike's dad was my favorite character in the whole book. I wish there was a book about him. But all the stuff I read about him really had nothing to do with the story. But besides that, all of the extra stuff, the extra time that I spent reading about things that really didn't matter or didn't affect the story in any way, I got to the point where they're trying to bite the tongue of it. And so in their mind, they're biting its tongue, but they're not really biting it, but they were still hurting it and killing it. And some of that stuff just didn't feel like a thing to put in a story that actually made sense. And then when you have an 11-year-old girl having sex with these other boys so that they will be able to find their way out of the tunnel, felt disturbing. Those things bothered me. Anyway, I rated the book outside of the top 5, something I'm glad I read, but I also felt disturbed, like almost guilty for reading some of the things I was reading. That's my admission. That's my confession. It was good, but it was disturbing, and I don't think I am proud. I don't think I'd want to tell my kids or my mother-in-law that I'm reading a story about some of the things I'm reading about in it. But let's move on. The 5th favorite book that I read in 2023 was Something Wicked, This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury. And I'm a fan of Ray Bradbury. I love his storytelling. I love the whimsical, almost fantasy-like way he tells tales. And I love this story. I think the only thing that really bothered me about the story is he went a little bit too far in that uh, that beautiful storytelling. I think he just went a little bit too far where he goes off into fairy tale land with this story. I think at times it went a little too far, but I love the book. And it's a book that I think I need to read again. A very good tale, a very fun tale. I love the characters in this book. And that's what I want. Give me a good story, give me good characters, and I'm in. And so, Something Wicked This Way Comes was a great one. It is fifth of my 5 favorite books I read in 2023, but it's also one that I think is special to me. It's hard to say that I like the other ones better because maybe this one's a little more special to me than some of the others. But there we go. It's my list. Sorry about that. Fourth place of what I read in 2023. I'm almost sort of embarrassed, but I'm not. It is Jaws. When Jaws is talked about, people always jump on the bandwagon of saying that the movie is better than the book and that Brody in the book is a dirtbag. And I'll say this, that movie Jaws is one of the best movies that was ever made. But this book Jaws was different, and I really did like it. And I think about Brody in the movie. He's more of a hero. He does things pretty much all on the up and up. He's got really nothing bad going on in his life. His wife's not cheating on him with a handsome, young, wealthy fellow that comes into town. He's not underachieving, or he's not disappointing his wife and family by only being the chief of police in a small town and not being a wealthy guy and giving his wife all the finest things. Where in the book he is. He's married a woman that came from money. She married a guy who would become the chief of police that really can't give her all the things that she's used to, can't give her the lifestyle that she longs for. And she ends up making him feel bad about himself. And she ends up cheating on him with a wealthy, young, good-looking scientist that comes into town. And so, yes, Brody's suspicious, loving his wife, but suspicious that she's cheating on him. Yes, he does act out. And I think the thing is, I can empathize. I can see how he feels the way he feels and acts the way he acts. He's trying to do the right things. He's trying to be the good guy. But it's sometimes hard to be the good guy when you got people trying to pull you in so many different directions. Also, the ending in the book is a little bit less exciting than the ending in the movie, but it still works for me. And I really like this book. I liked it a lot. I went into it having heard it's not as good as the movie. It's not even very good. And I say all those people are wrong. This book is very good. Maybe it's not as good as the movie, but it is so good as a book in so many different ways that I say on a level of quality of books, it's about as good as the movie is. So, I don't know, maybe not. What? I really did like Jaws. I was pleased with it, better than I expected. Number 3, this one again was a big-time movie that some people say eclipsed the book. Alfred Hitchcock, one of the greatest minds in movie of all time, directed this movie called Psycho. And it's based on a book by Robert Bloch. And I grew up with this movie. It is a phenomenal movie that I truly love. And it's a phenomenal book that I truly love. The movie being very faithful to the book, changing only a few things. Norman Bates in the book is described very differently than Norman Bates is in the movie. I also think Mary Crane is described better in the book. Her motivations, her plan to get away with it, the love affair that she has, and her hopes and all that stuff pinned on this $40,000. I think that part makes a whole lot more sense in the book. Otherwise, the book and the movie are so very similar. Some folks might say, well, I've seen the movie a dozen times. Why read a book that's almost the same? And I say it is almost the same, but reading the book is different. And having seen the movie a dozen or more times, then reading the book, I feel like I know the story so much better. And I like the story so much better than I did when I'd only seen the movie. Once again, another book that spawned a big-time movie. Second book, second place for the year 2023, I say is Silence of the Lambs. Wait just a cotton-picking minute. You said no sequels. Well, I make these rules, and I make them however I want to make them. Silence of the Lambs, it's in the Hannibal Lecter series, but it's not really a sequel to the Red Dragon. The Red Dragon has different main character, different goals, different setting, different things that they're trying to accomplish. And that story was told. And then there's a new story. And that story includes, like I said, different characters, different main characters, different goals, different tasks, and such as that. There is a tie, and that is the use of Hannibal Lecter to help find another serial killer. So it is in the Hannibal Lecter series, but I wouldn't call Silence of the Lambs a sequel to the Red Dragon. Now, Hannibal may be considered a sequel because it shares the main character. So that's up for debate. But anyway, that's my explanation. And the author, Thomas Harris, has written a series of books in this Hannibal Lecter world, involving Hannibal Lecter. Silence of the Lambs is the second one. And it was another one that I waited a long time to read the book because I'd seen the movie a bunch of times. The movie was great. But reading the book, I think the book is better than the movie, in my opinion. And in my opinion, also, it's the best book of the Hannibal Lecter series. So The Red Dragon was the first book in the series. And that book I really did like until the end. I felt like the end really left me down. The end left me feeling disappointed in my main character and disappointed in the outcome. It was such a downer. It left me feeling no positive came from this whole event. But with Silence of the Lambs, I felt quite the opposite. Our main character achieves. She gains, problems are solved. This book left me feeling good about the way things turned out. And throughout, there was not a single point in this story where I felt like I was out. With Red Dragon, there were times when Dollarhide was thinking about his past or was reliving Dollarhide's past. I kind of wanted to skip pages. I got sick of that stuff. I didn't get sick of stuff in this book. I wanted to find out what happened. I wanted to get to the end, but at no point in this book did I feel like I needed to skip anything. Silence of the Lambs, number 2, a great book. I would recommend it to anybody that likes books. There's a lot of books that I love that I wouldn't recommend. I'd recommend Thomas Harris' Silence of the Lambs. And then for the best book that I read in 2023, this book was released, I think, in 2021 as a limited edition by Earthling Publications that I have on the shelf right here. But it was released in 2023 in trade hardcover and trade softcover. And it was written by a cool fella named Philip Fracassi, and it's called Boys in the Valley. And if you haven't read it, I say you must go read it. There's a several books by Philip Fracassi that are out, and 2 of them I'd say are among the best books I've ever read. Boys in the Valley being up there, high on that list of my all-time favorite books, as well as A Child Alone with Strangers, which I read. You can see it on a video that I did previously where I reviewed that book. Boys in the Valley is set in the early 1900s, like 1905, and it's in an orphanage, a Catholic home for boys. And so it's an orphanage. And our main characters watched his father kill his mother and then kill himself. And now he's in this orphanage, and he's one of the older boys, and he's a good boy, a good guy, good at heart. He helps take care of the weaker ones, the more scared ones, protects them from bullies, helps to protect them from the people that are in charge of this orphanage that could be cruel at times. And there is a visitor. The police bring this guy in who's mad, raving, kind of like demon-possessed and badly injured, and it unleashes havoc and starts to take control of a lot of the boys in here. And so you got a group of the good boys, I guess you'd say, fighting for their lives, fighting for their very survival in the middle of nowhere at this orphanage, far from town, far from neighbors, in the winter, in the early 1900s. And the thing about this book is the character development, the story development, and the setting. It's all told in a way that I felt like I was there. I felt like I knew these kids, I knew these people, and I cared about them. And I cared about what happened. And if you want to get me interested in a story, you got to give me characters that I care about and I want to see good things happen. And I don't want to get too much more into Boys in the Valley. But if Philip Fracassi writes more books that are as good as this, he'll be perhaps one of the greatest authors who ever lived. So I've read 3 of his novels so far, relatively new to being a published author. But between Gothic, Boys in the Valley, and A Child Alone with Strangers, I can't think of any authors whose first 3 published novels, I guess that would be his first 3 mainstream published novels, are that good. It's hard to say. So if he can keep that up, maybe the greatest author who ever lived. It's early in the game. So that's a bold prediction and a bold statement. But I got faith in old Philip to keep pumping out good stories, and I'm excited. I would also say check him out. He's active on the Facebook. There's a Facebook group called Fracassi Freaks, and there's some pretty cool folks on that Facebook group. Book collectors, book readers, and stuff like that. And Philip's active there. He also has a Patreon account that he's just started up that I'm a patron to and excited to be because I'm also a book collector. So I look forward to getting cool things to add to my collection and stuff like that. But Fracassi is kicking butt and taking names. I can't wait to see what he comes out with in 2024, 2025, and beyond. But anyway, those are the 5 best books, in my opinion, that I read in 2023. And if I'm wrong, sorry. It's just my list. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. Please consider subscribing to the channel. I would truly appreciate it. With that being said, I can think of no more lies to tell. So thank you for your time, and c'est la vie, baby. Doo-doo.